What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
Guys, today we're breaking down the UFC 316 main event. Sugar Sean O'Malley looks to get his belt back against Merab Dvalishvili.
Oh, yeah.
Nick, there's a lot here, right?
Oh, yeah.
We did see this fight less than a year ago, but I think it's going to be a very different fight this time around because Sugar Sean O'Malley really didn't see any success in the fight until the fifth round when he changed his game plan. But then things did actually start to look pretty bright for him. It ultimately ended up being too little too late. And then we saw just an even better, more polished version of Merab as he took on Umar Nurmagomedov earlier in the year. So I think both guys in a lot of ways are going to be better in this fight. And I do expect both of them to come in with slightly different game plans.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we haven't seen Sugar since that fight, but we have seen Merab, the champion, defend his belt. And one thing that's really interesting is the game plan for their first fight for both guys was very interesting. Merab decided to stay far away, and it was irritating Sean. Sean then tried to get closer so he could actually land strikes, and then that's how he would wind up on the ground with Merab. So it's very tough for Sugar to find any success doing that again. But Merab also can't do the same thing he did last time either. And I think the fact that he was able to go out and do a different game plan against Umar and have success with it is great for his confidence, because I think he will be able to make the changes. It's sort of like chess, right? So Sugar had some ideas that he took into the first fight, and they didn't work out so well, but he's going to modify them. And I think Merab knows that the game plan is going to be different. It's probably going to be a more difficult fight, but he's also planning for the game plan changes and adjustments that Sugar's making. And I'm just interested to see how Merab comes out. Recently, it looks like Merab's striking is coming along pretty good. And he's always been a unique striker. His timing's a little weird, and he's always got this gas tank, so you don't have to worry about him gassing out. And that's sort of the reason he can throw so much volume. But the fact that he's mixing things up and really starting to use feints well, use level changes well to get inside, he's not just looking to put you against the cage and then drag you to the ground. He's totally fine to beat you up with volume until he starts to, break your will and break you down. And obviously he has a better gas tank than everybody in the division. So once he starts to see you wilt a little bit, then he really starts to put the pressure on. And that's where he finds more success in finding ways to get you to the ground and things like that. So I'm interested to see, because ring rust is a real thing in this sport. Most people are affected by it if they don't fight. Sugar, he's been a pretty active guy, but this break in between title fights is a lot, and seems to me like a lot has changed for
almost
Sugar.
a year.
Right, exactly. And Sugar has basically come out as a new guy. He's like, I'm putting the Sugar stuff to the side. I'm not dyeing my hair. I'm coming in on a mission. I got to get my belt back. And for me, I love that. I think, as the kids say now, it's a coined phrase. He's locked in. And it just feels to me like Sugar Sean understands he's maturing, and the gimmick and the character that he once was isn't who he is as a fighter. He's this lethal badass who can really do amazing things in the octagon. And some people are chalking it up to, he got favoritism from Dana White, and that famous thing at the press conference when they're like, you got Dana White privilege, and he said thanks Dana and gave him the fist bump.
Yeah,
that was great. He's playing into that sort of thing. But after we saw what Merab did to Umar, you have to realize that Sugar Sean is a far better fighter than people were giving him credit for, because he did just as good against Merab as Umar did, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So neither of them got their hand raised. And I just think that if Sugar goes out there and tries to change the game plan and control the fight rather than wait for his perfect opportunity to land a big shot, that will give him better success in this go round. And again, like you said, he started to find a little bit of success later in the fight, but it was too little too late. He didn't have the pop on his shots that late into the fight, and Merab just had the momentum, the confidence, and everything going in his way.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting to me is how Merab's going to handle the adjusted game plan of Sean, because I think if one thing we can all be guaranteed of is that Sean O'Malley is going to come in with a different game plan than he did the first time.
For sure.
If he doesn't, then he's just going to lose another lopsided decision. And I think Sean's a smarter fighter than that.
Yeah.
You take away the face tats and the hair dye and all of that. Sean is a very intelligent fighter. Mm-hmm. The guy knows what he's doing inside of the cage. Tim Welch is a really good coach. They make good adjustments and stuff like that.
Yep.
And Merab in the first fight just allowed himself to stay at such a far distance that Sean couldn't do anything. And Sean was afraid to chase, because once you start to chase a fighter, you give them the momentum that they need for the takedown. And I think he was so worried about the takedown that he forgot to throw any volume. And so the name of the game for Sean this time around, in my opinion, is controlled aggression. He has to be more aggressive than he was the first time he fought Merab, but that comes with a caveat, because too much aggression and you're an easy target for a takedown.
Agreed.
If you're just a super come forward, think of Charles Oliveira, super come forward, straight line, walking right towards you, you're very ripe for the picking as far as takedowns go. Now with Charles, he's got more submissions than anybody in the UFC's history, so
off his back.
That's worked for him.
Right.
That's not how Sean O'Malley fights, and so he can't take too many of those takedowns from Merab, because he's just going to lose the rounds and ultimately lose the fight. So the dialing in of how much aggression to use, I think, is going to be the make or break for Sean. He needs to make sure that he's putting enough pressure on Merab to where Merab's having to respond, and he needs to not chase. He needs to use angles and cage control to try to get Merab backed up and land some things. Now, speaking of landing some things, you mentioned a potential trick shot that Sean O'Malley has up his sleeve that you've seen in his training footage. Tell me a little bit more about that, and what do you how can he implement that, and what will happen if he lands?
Yeah, well, my mind just goes to these crazy places when we're watching the build-up and we get to see a little glimpse into training camp. And there's a particular combination that Sugar was working with Tim on the mitts. And what I noticed is he's staying really long. He's pawing kind of jabs, but the main focus when he's doing this particular drill with Tim is he's staying long and kind of baiting the opponent, which would be Merab, to shoot in, but he's staying very alert, and these are just a means to an end. They're just to get the guy to react, but his priorities and his thoughts are all on his balance, being able to step back, being able to evade. And the interesting thing about it is he's a dynamic striker. He doesn't just throw hands. He's got really creative kicks, but Merab Dvalishvili is very hard to hit with just standard striking. You have to mix it up a little bit. You got to catch him with his momentum. And the thing about Merab is he's a smaller guy, and generally smaller guys have to use momentum to either jump in and strike or change levels and take you down. So what Sugar was doing in this combination that was beautiful is he's throwing these long strikes. He'll end it with like a long two where the weight's now on the front foot. And that to me is an opening for a wrestler to shoot in. And the way Sean was playing with the arms and the range made it seem very appetizing for somebody to want to shoot in that situation. Now, most of the time when we see knees come up the middle on wrestlers, it's not a jump knee. It's more of something straight from the back. But what Sean was doing was the weight's in the front leg because he had just thrown the two, and then he does like a really short, not very high off the ground bicycle knee with that same leg that was once planted. He just quickly rotates it, switches back. The balance didn't go anywhere. He wasn't compromising his stance, and he was right back in the face of Tim Welch, which would be Merab in this situation. I just thought that was a really nice thing. And if there's anybody in the UFC that can land a specialty trick or a specialty move or a trick shot, it would be Sugar Sean. And I think that Tim Welch being in his corner and those two minds working together could be the one guy that and the one team that could actually knock Merab out with something targeted and specific just like that.
Well, that's really interesting because, when you think of the knee trick shot, your mind immediately goes to Jorge Masvidal.
Right.
He kind of knew what he was going to do against Ben Askren. He started the fight with his hands behind his back, kind of lollygagging.
Right.
And you're like, what the heck is this guy doing? And then boom, 2 seconds later, Ben Askren's out cold.
Exactly.
And absorbing 2 or 3 more shots after
Brutal.
that. But, when you think about that, the knee off the two, because the knee and the uppercut are both really good strikes for a wrestling specific opponent.
Right.
Because you're thinking hooks, straights, they can get under that, they can get around that, but in order to get to you, they need to change levels to a lower stance and come forward.
Right.
So what works in that situation? A knee and an uppercut. And so Merab's not stupid. He knows that Sean's probably going to be throwing some knees and mixing them in with some uppercuts. the trick shot, as you say, and I think it's just a really good technique, but it sounds fun to say it's a trick shot.
Right.
But what I think is really amazing is that you're anticipating the knee off the back leg, but if you do that shuffle step and make it a bicycle knee off the leg that had the weight on it, that's actually the leg that Merab is going to be going for. Right. So you're talking about he's going to be changing levels and going for that leg. If Sean can pull that off, he might stun him, and I don't know that would necessarily knock him out, but it could knock him down, and it would be really interesting. And those little breakdowns are why I love your analysis on the striking, because you watch these training videos and you watch these clips that they put out on YouTube and TikTok. Maybe, who knows, maybe we just accidentally gave Sean O'Malley's game plan away.
We got the script.
Hopefully not for Merab's sake if you're cheering for Merab, hopefully not for Sean's sake if you're cheering for Sean, because maybe Merab will be wiser. But I doubt it. We're a small channel, but growing.
Right.
I think that's really interesting analysis, and I'm actually really excited to watch the fight and see if he uses that exact move.
Yeah, and I think we will see it. Now, the success of it depends on how well he times it and lands it, but that's a technique, and the one thing that really gave me a feeling that it could be used in the fight was the timing of everything leading up to it. He's got a very interesting timing for the way he's pawing the jab out, the way he's feinting and showing little things, all the while staying very poised and ready to move back to evade and just get away from Merab if the shot doesn't look like it's there. But if he sees Merab shoot in a couple of times, and remember, Sugar looked really good with some of that takedown defense. He got his legs grabbed multiple times and defended some of those. Of course, he did get himself taken down several times, but he had some good takedown defense. You can't just grab Sugar's leg and assume that he's going to go to the ground. He's flexible. Remember, Merab lifted it all the way up to the top, and he's walking backwards with it. So I think Sugar can find that. And like I said, I don't want him to look for a single shot. Like he did that in the last fight. It was not successful for him. But if he can paw jabs and make a bunch of stuff look like it's coming your way, but only disguise that power in those long combinations and in controlling the fight, then you will have more success with it, right? You don't need to punch somebody with 100% of your power every time you hit them. It's actually better to pepper them a little bit, make them wonder which ones are going to be the hard ones. That way, they feel a little bit more comfortable with standing in the pocket with you. They're not going to run away and evade you the entire fight if you're throwing softer punches. They're going to say, okay, I can manage this. Let me, get my defense up, get my guard up, and then try to deal with it. Then you surprise them with the heavy shots. It's a long ball. I'm throwing a Hail Mary essentially, but I do see that strike being a significant strike in this fight, and who knows, it could be the start to the end. We could see Sugar land some sort of unique short bicycle kick on a takedown entry that winds up rocking Merab, and then we just see him finish off. I don't really know exactly how the fight's going to go, and nobody does, but I just have a feeling this technique is going to be utilized.
Interesting. Well, speaking of how the fight's going to go, I think it's time for you to give me your final prediction.
Yeah. Well, I guess the jury's out on that. I'm going Sugar Sean O'Malley. I know we just saw the fight. I know Merab is the favorite. I know it makes sense to go with Merab. And my brain is like, dude, you got to go Merab. He's obviously going to win this fight, 5-round decision, no brainer. But I just feel like Sugar Sean is locked in. And sometimes in this world, I love Merab, but bad things happen to good people. And Merab has been nothing but a great champ. He's had a meteoric rise. The fans seem to love him. But Sugar Sean has ice running through his veins. He's been so good on his rise up to the top. He did lose, but we saw that same guy beat Umar Nurmagomedov. So you have to understand that Sugar Sean is still one of the absolute best in the division. And I think he's got some really crafty, innovative striking. I think he can get the job done. It's not going to be easy. I think he's going to have to play a patient game, but he also has to bring the fight. He can't play too slow. He can't let Merab get too much momentum. I'm going to go, I don't feel confident about the round, but I'm going to go round 3, Sugar Sean O'Malley TKO off of something crazy like a bicycle knee, and then he finishes up with some ground and pound.
Interesting. Well, so my prediction The only thing we've seen of Merab Dvalishvili since the first time that he beat Sean O'Malley was an even better version of Merab Dvalishvili when he turned around and beat Umar Nurmagomedov in what was one of the best displays of mixed martial arts talent and skill that we've ever seen inside the octagon. I mean, Umar, say what you will about Umar. Oh, he didn't fight a contender. You know, oh, he was fast-tracked because of the last name. Umar Nurmagomedov is as skilled as they come, and Merab made him look ordinary. That is why I'm taking Merab Dvalishvili to win this fight again. He seems to be improving himself and reinventing himself with every fight. The aggression that he showed in the Umar fight was totally different than the Merab fight, than the O'Malley fight, the first one. And I know that there are different styles and you have to cater to somebody's style, but Merab looked as buttoned up as a fighter can look in that fight against Umar. I think that Sean is really good. I'm a fan. I like Sugar. I almost would like to see another Sugar run as the champion because I think he brings a lot of eyes to the sport. I just don't think it's in the cards against Merab. Now, Merab's getting older. He's getting towards his late 30s. Maybe Sugar has some resurgence after Merab's career starts to go on the decline, but it's not happening this weekend. Merab Dvalishvili. And I wish I could say something emphatic like second round TKO,
bicycle kick.
Merab Dvalishvili, unanimous decision.
There we go.
But a decisive one at that.
The way Merab does it best, right there by decision, gets the judges involved.
He's going to unanimous decision the shit out of O'Malley.
Absolutely.